Hey everyone. Should we wait for a minute or two before everyone comes in?
You can wait for like 2 more minutes.
Okay.
All right, you should be good to get started now.
Awesome. Hey everyone. My name is Deepita, and thanks for attending this talk. This talk is going to be about navigating the technical interview process, and I'm going to be talking about some of the experience that I have faced myself, and about the general interview process that normally all tech companies follow. A little bit about myself. As I said, my name is Deepita. I am a senior software engineer at Block. For those who are not aware, Block is a financial services company based out of San Francisco Bay Area. The Block started with a product called a Square Terminal, which is what you would use at small and medium businesses like coffee shops, etc., to pay for coffee. We in 2013 we expanded to Cash App, which is the product that I work on. And you can use Cash App to pay your friends or invest in stocks or Bitcoin. I personally work on Cash App's health and identity team. So I work on verifying customers who onboard onto Cash App and ensuring that the customers who are on Cash App are legit customers and they're not bad actors. I'm a backend engineer, and I've been at Block for roughly 2 years now. Previously, I worked on Amazon on Amazon's customer reviews feature. I'm pretty sure most of you would have used this. It is the reviews feature that you look at before buying a product, ensuring that people who bought this are satisfied or who are not satisfied. And then before that, I was at Amazon for 2 years as well. And before that, I did my master's at TU Munich in computer science. And I was also a researcher at Harvard University. During this process, since my master's, I have changed 2 jobs. And in this 4 years, I roughly interviewed with 50 odd companies and negotiated a bunch of offers. So I've collected a lot of experience in this last 4 years, and I've been helping my friends and everyone around. So I thought this would be helpful for some of you who are in the same place as I was. So this talk is mainly going to cover this 6 aspects, which is we'll start with crafting the perfect resume. And then once you have that perfect resume, how do you go about applying to jobs, networking, finding recruiters, and let's say that you got your foot in the door, and recruiters have started looking at your profile, and they reached out to you. What do the typical next steps look like? Which would include the recruiter screening, followed by a couple of phone interviews, and then a bunch of on-sites, and finally to the offer negotiation step. So we'll cover each of these 6 aspects. I want to say that feel free to interject at any time. If you have any kind of question, I'm happy to answer it during the talk. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions. All right. We'll start with the first step, which is crafting the perfect resume. So this is normally the first step when you start looking for jobs. This is what you start doing. you would see that a lot of software engineers usually have a LaTeX based format, which is LaTeX is a like a coding language which is used to uh, write your resume in. I think Overleaf is a great product that you can use to create a LaTeX based template. Um, Normally I see people creating a one page resume because recruiters typically have 30 seconds to look at a resume and decide whether they want to move on with the candidate. And so a one page resume is a uh, great template to look at to get all the information you want to know about a person. There are a few people who, who go fancy and they create a website, or they tailor their resume based on the employer that they're applying to. But normally a generic one pager resume works best for all the jobs that I've seen so far. When I started with creating my resume, I actually started with a very basic Word document, and then I kept refining it until I found something that I really liked. So we'll look at a couple of templates now. The first one is what I've used myself. It uses a latex template. It is a one pager. It shows you the education and the experience that this person has had, what they worked on at each of these employers. It also shows you, the awards that they won, the programming skills that they worked on, and any projects or courses that they took in the university. And so it's a fairly good and quick way to understand what this person has worked on. The second and third are the ones that I was telling you about, which are tailored to the employers. So the second one is the one where a person created this for Amazon, and so it's in the same format as you would see a product being listed on Amazon. And the third one is for Spotify, I guess, where they've created one which looks like an artist's profile on Spotify. So all of these work. It really depends on how much time you have and how much you want to convey using a resume. Um, yeah, so that's mostly on the resume side. Um, Now let's say you created this resume, and you sent it to a couple of friends and they said this looks good, you can go ahead with this resume. What's the next step look like? So typically, you can, depending on what you're okay with, I normally start with looking at LinkedIn, and updating my LinkedIn profile. And then I start looking at LinkedIn jobs, which is where you would see a lot of open positions of different companies. And those are recommended based on your profile. So you know that the jobs that are flagged there are, specific to your profile and something that you can land up doing. Um, some other ways where you can find potential employers and jobs is through networking with recruiters, and managers in career fairs. So this could be your college fairs, or this could be community specific conferences like Grace Hoppers and others, where you would find a lot of recruiters walking around and talking about their companies. So this is a great way to get their contacts and email them your resume. And it's also the fastest way that you can get an interview, I feel. Some other ways to apply to jobs includes going to technical meetups. A lot of tech companies hold these meetups where they want to talk about the cool software that they're building, but also want to network with like-minded people. So this is a great way to talk to hiring managers and employees at these companies and get to know about their work, and also network with them and give out your resumes and see if they have any open positions. I've done a lot of these, and I've found conferences and technical meetups to be really helpful. But if you're in a place that doesn't have either of these, I think LinkedIn Jobs works great. What else works is finding roles on AngelList. This is a website where you can find startups that list their open positions. So if you're someone who's interested in startups, this is a great way to look for early stage companies that are looking for employees, like founding engineers and so on. Hacker News is also another great platform where you can look for Y Combinator backed companies that are looking for founding engineers. And typically, I've seen people reach out to people if you've replied to them. And as I said, LinkedIn Jobs is another great platform. Any questions, any thoughts so far? Cool. So, let's say that you reached out to these recruiters, and typically what I've seen is you've got to apply to a bunch of positions to hear back from a few of them. Okay, I see. Okay, no questions, just comment. Great. I'm glad that you're liking it so far. Yeah, so what I've normally done is, if I've applied to say 100 jobs, and then eventually about 40 of them reach back and say that they want to talk further. So it's really a numbers game where you apply to as many positions as possible, and then you wait to hear back at least from a few of them. So let's say that you did all of this, and then you heard back from a couple of recruiters, and they say, "Hey, we like your profile. It's awesome. It fits one of our open positions. Do you want to talk more on this?" So this is when you have a recruiter screening, where it's typically a 30-minute introductory call with a recruiter. And this recruiter would go over your skills, the job description, what the hiring manager is looking for, what the interview process looks like for this company, and then they would normally ask if you have any other open offers, or where are you in the interview process, to know how fast or slow they should move. And so if you've just started and you need time to prepare, they are totally okay with that. And then you can tell them that, hey, reach back to me after a month or so, and then I'll be ready. And that works for a lot of recruiters as well. The one tip that I would give you is that recruiters are your best friend during this process. So feel free to ask them any questions you have, or check with them about any resources that you would specifically need to read upon before an interview. And they would definitely help you with it. They really want you to succeed and get that offer, because it is on the recruiter, how much they help candidates get an offer. So it's a win-win for both of you. So definitely reach out to your recruiter for any questions. So let's say you did this introductory call and you got to know about this company's interview process, and then let's say you're ready for the interview process, and you say, "Hey, let's schedule the next steps for a week from now." What does that look like? So typically, for most technical companies, what I've seen is they would do one or two phone screen rounds. The phone part is not really followed. It's generally like a coding interview problem, where you virtually talk with an interviewer who is an employee at that company. And this interview lasts for about 60 minutes. It starts with a quick round of introduction about the interviewer itself, and then about you. And then you go on and you solve a coding problem with this interviewer on a pairing platform like Codopad. One tip I would give you is get familiarized with these pairing tools like Codopad and others before you start your interview, so that you feel much more comfortable with the tool itself. And the expectation is that in this 45-50 minutes, you would together work on a problem, and come to a solution, and be able to run that solution in that 15 minutes time frame. Um, you should realize that the interviewer is not really like an interviewer. Think of them as a colleague at your future company, so you're working together to solve a problem. And so you should tell them about your thought process, and let them know what you're thinking, and they would help you come to the solution that they expect you to solve. And then the last 10 minutes of the interview is when you normally ask them about any questions you have about the company or about the day-to-day work. And that's how a typical phone screen round looks like. Some companies also do a take-home exercise, which is where they would give you a problem and a data set or something to work on, and you normally have 4 to 5 days to solve it, and send them back the solution. This is like a less stressful way of doing an interview, but it also takes more of the candidate's time. I personally prefer the technical coding interview of 60 minutes than this, because you're just done in 60 minutes, and you don't have to work on it for a week and then hear a no from the employer. That's what a phone screen round looks like. Some companies do one round, some like to do two rounds. Sometimes what happens is, let's say you did one round and then the interview felt you were, you could have done better. In that case, they could schedule a follow up interview, which would look very similar to this round itself. It's just another round to get signal for the interviewer whether they want to pass you to the on site or not. Yeah. So, what does the coding interview look like? So, the 45-50 minutes that you spend with this interviewer would involve solving simple problems that require you to use data structures and algorithms to arrive at a solution. Data structures could be using hash map, arrays, linked lists, graphs, anything that would be useful to solve that problem. It could range from like generic questions like, they'll provide you with a string and you would have to validate if the parentheses are balanced in a string or not. Or it could be specific to what the employee works on. Let's say you interview at Block, and since it's a financial service company, they might ask you to design a split files like application where you need to split bills for a group of friends. It could be anything really. The idea is that given an abstract problem, how do you arrive at a solution with an interviewer? How do you start preparing for an interview like this? Um, I think to start off, one thing that really helped me was going over data structures and algorithms itself. A lot of us covered this in our first or second semester of college, and then we forget about it for the rest of the 4 3 4 years. But it's really good to brush up on your basics. And so one course I highly recommend is CS50 by David Milan. He's a professor at Howard, and this is a fairly popular course that you would find on YouTube and other platforms. So definitely recommend going over this course. And then I think the second best resource would be Cracking the Coding Interview book. It's a fairly fat book, but it covers all the topics that you would need for any kind of technical interview. But I feel like this is still just scratching the surface and really is not a good example of what the interviewers normally ask for. To get there, you would need to solve a bunch of problems on platforms like LeetCode, which have questions tagged for each employer. So you would see what are the different questions that Google asks for or Airbnb asks, and you can filter for those questions specifically and solve them to get an idea of what to expect in an interview. There are other platforms like NeetCode where you have topic-wise problems with solution videos, which are a great way to understand problems. And lastly, let's say you solved about 50 100 questions. You feel like you're fairly confident cracking the interview. At this step is when I would recommend that you start doing practice interviews. And so one good platform to do that is PRAMP. It is where you would get matched with other interviewers and they would ask you a sample problem and you would solve a question with them over a period of 60 minutes, and then you would do the same thing for the other person. So basically both of you are preparing for interview, but you're just acting as an interviewer for one part and the interview for the other part. And this really helps to get over the interview jitters and feel more confident for the actual interview. So these are some resources that I used. Let's go to the the interview itself. Like I said, the interview starts with giving a description of the problem. Start by asking some clarifying questions and discuss some open, like edge cases for this problem. And then just try to over communicate and let the interviewer know what you're thinking about, so that they should get more and more signal of what you're thinking, how you're approaching the problem, and that's sometimes more important than getting at the solution itself. So definitely over communicate and discuss the approach with the interviewer before you start the implementation, so that if you're not really at the right approach, the interviewer can help you with it. And lastly, you should, if possible, run the solution. CodePad lets you do that with different test cases, and that ensures that your question and the problem and the solution runs end to end. So that's what a coding interview would look like normally. Now, let's say you pass this round, which is great, and the recruiter reaches back and tells you that, "Hey, you passed this round. We want you to meet the other engineers on this team and go through a round of interviews." And so, what does the on-site round look like? On-site typically pre-COVID, this meant that you went to the company, you met the engineers on the team, you spent a day with different rounds of interviews, and got a sense of what working at that company would look like. During pandemic, all of this became virtual, so you would do a day of interviews on Zoom, and yeah, that's what an on-site would look like. Um, Depends on the company to company what each company follows. Most of them, I would say, would have 2 to 3 coding interviews, and they all have breaks in between. So you can take water break or washroom break or a lunch break, and then go on to the next round. For senior engineers, this would also involve a round or two of system design, where you would be asked to design a live system like e-commerce store or a YouTube or a messaging app or an API. And eventually, this will be followed by a behavioral interview where you'll be asked about, tell me a time when you faced a conflict in a project that you worked on, how did you deal with that conflict, and so on. And then lastly, this might also include an interview with the hiring manager to get a sense of what the day-to-day job would look like for this open position, and if you really like working with the team. So the first 2, 3 coding interviews that I was telling you about would look very similar to the phone screen round. It's actually the same format. It's just in an on-site interview. The company would like to get more signal of how you perform in a coding interview. So nothing would change from what was there in the phone screen. Yeah, they just would want to have more signal coming from you on the coding skills. And then the system design round, like I said, would involve designing a YouTube or an Instagram. The preparation for this would be a little different from a coding interview, because you'll be asked to design pieces of a system. Like, how do you go about, for a messaging app, it would be, how do you go about messaging another person? How do you ensure that the application can scale to multiple users, and things like that. So as I said, this normally goes for senior engineers and not so much for the entry level engineers. And behavioral is something which I think Amazon follows a lot. They really want to know how you are to work with as a person, and this really matters to a lot of companies, because they want to have genuine, good, smart, intelligent, and warm people to work with. And so this is a 45-minute interview where they want to hear stories about what you worked on in the previous company, how you dealt with different scenarios. And the idea here is to be honest and to give honest stories about your experience in your previous companies or previous projects that you worked on at school or otherwise. And you could even mention about the hackathon related stories here. So all of this counts as an experience. Awesome. So let's say you did a whole day of on-site interviews. You're super tired by the end of the day normally. But then the wait starts here, because all of these interviews that you did previously, all of the interviewers would need to calibrate and discuss if you really met the bar, and if the open position is really suiting you. So you normally wait for like a good 2, 3 days to hear back from the recruiter. Sometimes they can take more time. And let's say the recruiter reaches back and says, "Hey, you passed the on-site round," which is great, because very few people normally make it to this point. From my personal experience, if I applied to 100 companies and if I heard back from 40 of them, I might have passed just 10 or 15 of the on-site interviews of these 40 recruiters that reached out to me. So it is a fairly complex step, and it really is not about your it's not really indicative of your preparation and skill, but also a lot of luck involved in this. So never take it to heart, if you don't make it to any of these companies, but just keep trying again and again till something clicks. So let's say you pass the on-site round. Now, what comes next? Um, the next step of this process, which is a final step, is the offer negotiation. This is where the recruiter reaches out to you and lets you know about the offer numbers. And what does this offer numbers look like? This could contain multiple components, like what the base salary would be, what your stock options look like, and what the joining bonus looks like. This is the time when you should do your due diligence and check different resources for recent offers for this position. So some platforms to check for would be Blind, would be Levels.fyi and Glassdoor, to know what are the recent offers, what do the employees say about this company, is this company doing well, and just get a good sense of if the offer being offered to you is legit and if it meets your expectations. I always recommend, my friends and family to negotiate their offer. Whatever you're being offered, always negotiate, because it really doesn't hurt to ask for what you deserve, and what you deserve is definitely more than what the recruiter is offering you. So always negotiate your offer. And besides, what I personally feel is like re- offer negotiation is the only point in your career where you would get a salary bump, because once you join the company, there is really no bump after that. And you might discover that people who are at the same level as you are being offered more just because they negotiated more at the offer stage. So always negotiate your offer. And the second thing I would recommend is, speak to your hiring manager, the future manager that you'll be working with, and your future teammates, to get a sense of, what the work is going to be. Do you like your team? Do you like the work that you're going to work on? And based on all of this, you can decide whether to accept or, reject an offer. Yeah, so those are all the steps and all the tips I had. Did anyone have any questions? Feel free to ask any questions, any help. Facts. What is facts? Is proficiency in math required for computer science? Um, I would say yes, but I would also say it doesn't require you to be like really proficient. I can give you from my experience that I wasn't one of those kids who were really smart in math. If anything, my parents always told me that was the one subject they wanted me to improve on. And so I'm still like, I really like computer science despite not being great at math. So I would say you don't really need to be great, but a decent level of math skills would be nice for different problems. What are the best extracurriculars to do with computer science? Um, do you mean like what would help to get you into college, or do you mean like within computer science what we like working on? I personally feel like something like economics would be great, because a lot of economics is driven by models and computer science topics. So that'd be great. Things I can do with computer science to help get into college, or just and showcase my skill. Yeah, so I think economics would be great. Anything computer science I feel is a pretty generic field, so you can do anything with it. Like you can apply it on health, you can build a great software or a website talking about different workouts to do, or depends on what your interests are. So you can really combine anything with computer science and uh, be able to showcase that. Any other questions? These are great questions, by the way. Awesome. Looks